Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are here to discuss Makhanda or Makana municipality. We're joined by some very interesting guests, and I'll introduce them in a moment. But we're just trying to get Lungile as one of our panelists. There he is. Fantastic. So I'm going to begin. Welcome to the second episode of our Community Action Network series of co-governance webinars. We host these sessions monthly on the last Wednesday of every month, and these webinars are a space for local community organizations to learn how to expand some of the work they do and learn from other groups who are blazing the trail for co-governance and local accountability. If you have any questions for tonight's panel, please make use of the chat and Q&A functions, and we will get to as many of them as possible in the last 15 minutes or so. So tonight I'm joined by my colleague Jonathan Erasmus, the project manager of the National Community Action Network of OUTA, who will help us out in the event that my power is a bit unstable or my internet connection goes away. But like I said, we are talking about Makhanda, a significant city in the Eastern Cape, who together with residents, civil society and business associations took their municipality to court to dissolve the council and won. Many groups around the country, sick of poor or non-existent service delivery, want to hold their municipalities to account in much the same way. And we are pleased to welcome some of the key role players in the case to find out what such a move would take, what led to such a case, and what has happened since in Makhanda. So we're joined by Philip Machanick, who is an Emeritus Associate Professor at Rhodes University and member of the citizens group who brought the case. Lungile Mxube, interim chair of the Makana Citizens Front, and unfortunately, though Brin Brody, senior director at Wheeldon, Rushmere Cole Attorneys, has had an urgent matter and has to argue that this evening. So unfortunately, will be unable to join us. But like I said, we have Phil and Lungile, who were very central to the case itself. I'd also like to acknowledge Mr. Ayanda Kota of the Unemployed People's Movement, who was the public face of the case and a strong activist in the Makhanda community for years. Ayanda sadly passed away in February after a battle with cancer. His memory and efforts are strongly felt throughout the town, and in this case, may he rest in power. So I mentioned Makhanda is significant, but why? Formerly known as Grahamstown, the East by Xhosa warriors, early parliament as the second biggest colonial city after Cape Town, and is home to Rhodes University, which is acknowledging its 120th anniversary this year, hosts several historic private institutions such as St. Andrews and the DSG schools, is the center for many study institutes such as SAFSE and nationally renowned Nanotechnology Center, was the site of the first IP address, so basically is the birthplace of our online lives as we know them today, is host of the National Arts Festival, is the seat of the Provincial High Court, and is also the seat of many religious institutions and a military base. So in theory, it should actually be a resilient, well-funded and sustaining town. So where did the wheels come off? As residents of Makhanda, Phil, can you tell us a little bit about your experience of having to live in the town and what it's like being a resident?
So for once, I was not talking enough. Thanks for the introduction. So Makhanda, formerly Grahamstown, if anyone missed that in the introduction, is pretty much a microcosm of South Africa as a whole. We've been watching with interest reports, for instance, of Joburg having to do without water. Well, okay, we know what that is. And people complaining about potholes. On a recent trip, in fact, when I went to Gauteng, I went via the Free State and discovered some R roads that had potholes big enough to conceal a donkey. So it's not only in Makhanda, it's not only in the Eastern Cape. So what we have is a widespread symptom, and what we need to do is drill down to the cause, which is incapable government. And incapable government is driven by a number of factors, including corruption. And, you know, what we have been trying to do as a community is get a handle on how we actually turn that around. So that Section 139 case, to quote the section of the Constitution that applied, that would have dissolved the council was part of a much wider process. So dissolving a council is not a magic bullet. The government could appoint a useless administrator, which means the period without a council doesn't get anything useful done. And if you don't have a movement waiting in the wings to win the next election, you could end up with the same dysfunctional council as you had before. I'll leave it to Lungile to address exactly how you would take that up. I think from my point of view, the thing I can add the most to here in the discussion is the process of gathering evidence. And that was a community-wide effort. We had a number of different people doing it. The main body of the work was done by members of the Makana Residents Association, the people from the business community, other residents. And there are a few things that we know now that we didn't know then that could have been useful. For instance, PIA requests, that's the Promotion of Access to Information Act, can be a powerful tool for getting information out of a municipality that can add to a case. Another thing you can study, and we got a lot of information from this, is municipal agendas, which contain a lot of information about where money has been spent, if not necessarily in the correct way. And you can pick up all kinds of things from that. Auditor General disclaimers are also a useful source of information. And they're a source of information in the sense that they're often missing critical information. And the absence of information is actually information. So the sort of details that could be pointed to by PIA requests or by gaps in the AG report and so on are flaws in the supply chain process. In other words, the way things are acquired by the municipality and paid for, inadequate implementation of an asset register. Give you one example of an issue we're pursuing right now. There's a thing that we've seen very often in our municipal agendas is expenditure on repairs and replacements of large-scale pumps used for water infrastructure. These are not little things, something that could fall out of your pocket like a phone. They are huge machines, bigger than the desk I'm sitting at now, that weigh over a ton. And so what we did was we put in PIA requests to determine a few rather basic things like where each pump is and what its serial number is. And the way PIA is meant to work is you put in the information in a request in a standard format, and the municipality is meant to reply in a standard amount of time, either with the information requested or a solid reason not to. So we just got silence. So we persisted, and eventually it was about to go to court when we started getting letters from their lawyers with one reason after another for delay. A pump station has been flooded. They can't look at it now. And then they asked for a 3-month delay. Now, I ask you with tears in my voice, you have a machine that weighs more than a ton. Why does it take you 3 months to track down where it is? Either it's where it's supposed to be installed or it's gone off somewhere for repairs. And if you're keeping proper logs of what is happening to all of those pieces of equipment, you should know where they all are. You might not be able to find them in 5 minutes because you may otherwise be busy, but you should be able to find them certainly in a matter of a few days, if not a week. So this is all jumping a little bit ahead. So let's just go back to where we started working on the Section 139 case. The starting point was a petition calling for the dissolution of council. And that was incredibly successful. We collected over 20,000 signatures. And, the previous municipal election, only something like 24,000 people voted. So that was a huge number for a municipality of this size. Now, one thing which we maybe missed at that stage is that Section 17 of the Constitution establishes the right to present petitions. Now, a right is not particularly meaningful unless it is something that can have a consequence. So presenting a petition establishes the right to tell government that there's a problem, but for it to be meaningful, government should actually respond in a meaningful way. And possibly because we did not invoke Section 17, or maybe because the government didn't believe that we would follow up, they pretty much ignored that petition. The only thing that happened was the mayor got replaced by another mayor who I think was trying a bit harder than the previous one, but because the rest of the council was the same as before, his mayoral committee did not cooperate if he tried to change things. So things did not really get better. So going on from there, what was really valuable was building cross-class, non-racial coalitions. So the business community, Makana Residents Association, represent the side of town where there's a relatively large amount of money, but not the majority of the population. So having alliances with organizations like UPM helped us to get this petition really large and helped us to convince ourselves that there's widespread support for the Section 139 case. So in addition to the information gathering, we could then go with reasonable confidence to the court that we had fairly wide community support. And so one of the issues that came up with this case was, because it was a novelty, there was some concern of what if we lost with costs. Now, from what we know now, I don't think we should have been so concerned, because number one, we actually won. So we've now got a precedent, and not only that, it was appealed all the way to the Supreme Court of Appeal. And in the final event, it was not actually implemented because the 2021 local government elections effectively dissolved the council anyway. So the court dissolving the council would have been moot, but it was not overturned. So it stands as a precedent, number one. And number two, the issue which I think is very important to understand if you're litigating a matter like this, make sure that you involve constitutional rights front and center, because if you're litigating for constitutional rights, there's a precedent called BioWatch that sets a very high bar for awarding costs against such litigation. Essentially, if you are asking the courts to uphold constitutional rights, unless your case is completely frivolous and without merit, then BioWatch will protect you against the costs order. So, I mean, it's a pity that Brin Brody can't be here now, because, you know, he played such a crucial role, not only this, but several other really significant court actions. One was one where we litigated against the state of the landfill site. I wasn't so deeply involved in that one. And yet another one was where we litigated against Eskom shutting off power to residents because the municipality was not paying its bills. And it's really important to have public interest lawyers on cases like this, because it takes a lot of their time. On a big matter like this, it may take several days to draw up the court papers. And even if your legal team are not charging for their time, it's a big cost to them, because it means they aren't doing work that they could be billing for. And there will still be costs. You'll have costs like printing, which can get expensive in a big matter, where you have a lot of respondents and they all need copies of the papers. And also the other one is serving respondents. So it's not completely cost-free, even if you have lawyers working pro bono. But a huge thank you to Brin Brody and his team. So the important issues really that I'd like to finish with is being aware of constitutional rights. Section 17, the right to present petitions. Section 27(1)(b), the right to sufficient water. 24A, the right to environment not harmful to your health and well-being. And if you frame the case in terms of those rights, number one, it protects you against costs because of BioWatch. And number two, it gives you a solid basis for the rest of the case, which your legal team will then have to build by going to the statutes, in other words, the laws, and cases. And so with a strong legal team, you can build on that starting point. But as non-legal people, it's not that hard to understand the rights inherent in the Constitution. So with a solid chain of evidence, you can then win a case like that. But actually, the first prize is if the case is built up in a meticulous way that is pushing the municipality every step of the way to reveal information that shows them to be dysfunctional, shows them not to be carrying out processes like managing the supply chain correctly and so on. The first prize really is to push the municipality to do their job correctly, because legal proceedings are lengthy, it takes a long time to get on the court roll, and if you have urgency, things can then be further delayed with people like, for instance, the various respondents coming up with reasons to delay the matter. And in a matter like this, you have a lot of respondents, because you've got to involve not just the municipality, but all layers of government that could be involved. So, as I said at the beginning, it's not necessarily a magic bullet to ensure that you turn a municipality around, but we have a solid precedent now. So if somebody else takes it on, they can learn from our lessons and from the ideas that we have since developed. So I'll wrap it up there, and we can take it back to the hosts for whatever the next move is. Thanks.
Thanks, Philip. We'll loop back on some of the things you mentioned. I think it's really important to understand exactly what you said there, that it doesn't necessarily fix anything, but in the long term, there's great precedent here that a lot of other groups can really learn from and kind of show them some of the tricks and doddles of why this has been so difficult to get done. Lungile, I'm going to turn to you now and just ask, for a lot of people living in Makhanda, it's not necessarily that the wheels came off. It's kind of that they've never really had services. The town has always been very divided in terms of both color and social economic backgrounds and so forth. So what is it like for the large majority of people in Grahamstown leading up to the case? What was their lived experience? And what is the case subsequently? Has anything changed for the large majority of people living in Makhanda?
Thank you very much. I'm struggling to put on my camera. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, loud and clear. Thank you, Lungile.
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting us to this very important meeting. You see, Makana has been experiencing an infrastructure decay, bad governance, corruption, you can name them. The problem started to become more visible in 2011 after the local government elections. Was what the ANC did. They brought in a mayor who did not even have just a basic qualification to understand how to deal with people, to capitalize about the fact that we've got one of the best university in town, and that Makana is one of the best, city in terms of the educational infrastructure. And that we said to them, look, you are undermining the integrity and the intellect of the town, because this town is flooded with highly qualified academics and professors. But because of arrogance of power and arrogance of numbers, they never listen to anybody. They do as they please. 2011 became a big problem in Makhanda because what this mayor did, in order to pay back to those who propelled him into that position in the ANC, he then decided to dish out patronage where there are people who were employed in the municipality without any proper budget and positions that are not even in the organogram. Now, they had to now redirect the infrastructure grants in order to sustain the salaries and the benefits of these people. And as a result, in 2011, the entire infrastructure for water, road infrastructure collapsed in Makana, and the entire city was populated with potholes. We made a noise as a civil society. That's when we started now to come together and to form a coalition of civil society, where we said to our colleagues, let's now suspend our differences. Let's not allow politics or ideology to divide us. Let's speak with one voice. We need a strong voice of the civil society so that we can challenge the internal rot in the municipality. And as a result of our struggles, in 2013, we then exposed, that was our first exposure of the former municipal manager who defrauded our municipality over 3.7 million. And he also tried to claim legal costs into the municipality for his own private legal cases. We then exposed that, and that led to him to be formally charged for corruption, for dishonesty, and for fraud. Eventually, that municipal manager was dismissed from the municipality. Subsequent to his dismissal, we then realized that it was too late because a damage has already been caused in the system of the municipality, because the municipality was flooded by more than 80 ghost workers. The system was also tampered with, because currently the municipality does not even have a software that tell us in terms of the infrastructure that is underground, the water pipes, the sewer pipes. So what they are now doing, they are getting outside companies who are digging trenches in our city. As a result, they damage the underground infrastructure, which results to now water being contaminated with human waste. And as a result, the municipality is giving the residents water that is contaminated with human waste. So it's a mess that we are experiencing in Makana. We then campaigned vigorously to a point where the national government decided to put the municipality in 2014 under administration. And when that was achieved, we demanded that there must be a forensic investigation in our municipality. That's how Kabuso forensic investigators were appointed. So they have now released their report, which is quite a very bad report. Maybe Professor Philip can also share that report with yourselves. The ANC tried to hide the report to keep it confidential. We campaigned, we ensured that that report become a public document. It was through our efforts, and in that report, you'll find that it also says there was a money laundering scheme inside the office of the mayor. Also, they tried to create fictitious companies in order to channel thousands of rands from the municipal account into entities that do not exist. And that became very glaring towards Mangaung ANC conference in 2012, where many companies were awarded, by the mayor through his discretionary grant for doing nothing. Others will double up and submit 2 invoices for the same event. So we then demanded that the municipality must be dissolved. They then appointed an administrator in 2014. We then discovered that even the administrator who was appointed have overstayed in Makana for 9 months. There was no closeout report. He has done absolutely nothing. Instead, the situation became worse because we discovered that over 600 million, which was invested by national government in order to address the water infrastructure upgrade, it has been misused, it has been abused. There's corruption where they appoint companies from outside Makana who don't complete project delivery, and they now get a new tender under a new subsidiary. So we've got all those statistics that shows that how the municipality has been captured by internal rot, and there is an organized criminal syndicate group. We also work very hard to bring gift of the givers into the city, but gift of the givers have done a great job. They've managed to identify boreholes, but unfortunately they were frustrated by the municipal officials who've got some business interest, because they realized that if gift of the givers is going to connect all the boreholes so that the city can have enough water, they won't be able to make profit out of the water crisis. They decided to frustrate, and even the grant that was given, which was supposed to be given to gift of the givers in order to connect some of the boreholes, it was also misused. So the situation is very bad. There's nothing that is promising in our city. Hence, we decided to launch anti-corruption and the water people's rights, signature campaign, where we want to secure 20,000 signatures in order to force the Minister of Water and Sanitation to do a forensic investigation, but also to do a skills audit so that the proper qualified engineers are appointed in order to restore good governance in our city and to bring our municipality back on track so that there is effective service delivery.
Thanks, Lungile. So the question basically is, obviously a lot of things were tried in Makhanda to try and set the record straight, to try and dissolve the council. So the city was placed under administration. In one case, even the mayor's car was attached by debtors of the city. You've had interventions from DWS, you had interventions from provincial. There's been a lot of different parts of the work that have happened. But at the end of the day, like Philip said, you go to court, you win this landmark judgment, you have this like great piece of precedent at your fingertips. What was the plan? So now you've dissolved council, even though it wasn't necessary because the 2011 elections came along. What was the plan thereafter? Like, how did you intend to run the municipality? And how is that kind of, what are the problems you faced with making that happen? So you managed to dissolve council, you get new people in, but none of you at the moment are councillors. So what happened? How do you fix that issue? And what is the intention to kind of turn the city around?
Okay, in 2019, there was this landmark court judgment. Now the plan was to sit down with the government so that both the civil society and the local communities makes an input in what is called an integrated financial recovery plan, which the government, both the province and national, committed that they are going to resource and finance that financial recovery plan. What happened without the municipal resolution, the provincial government decided to appeal the judgment. Premier Oscar took it to the High Court of Appeal, and there was a delay because they tried to buy time so that that process can be overtaken by 2021, a local government election. So the dissolution became a mute because there was a new council now. That's when we then decided on the 16th of June 2021, after having realized that the dissolution is not going ahead, because what they are doing now, they are trying to drain us by taking the matter to court, using taxpayers in order to buy time. So on the 16th of June, we said, we've tried all angles. We've petitioned the national, we've protested, we marched, we demonstrated, we blocked the roads, and we organized total shutdown. What is our next step now? And then we said, the people said, we must form now a civic movement that is going to contest the local government. And then on the 16th of June, that civic movement was then formed, which is now called the Makana Citizens Front. Within a period of 4 months, we managed to secure 18.1 electoral support, which translates to 5 seats. So if you look at all the 14 wards in Makana, we are the second biggest civic movement after ANC. In areas where the wards are won by the DA, we are the second biggest movement after the DA. So now, what the ANC did now, which we never anticipated, and that's a lesson that civil society must also take it serious, that you must always be vigilant, because when the ANC realized that we have taken 3 seats from them, we took about 2 seats from the DA, they realized that our mission was to reduce the ANC below 50%, and ultimately our objective was to remove ANC from power. So what they did, they saw some artificial differences in the MCF. They tried to divide us, which led now to the 5 legitimate PR councillors being unlawfully removed under the pretext that then the MM wrote to the IEC declaring a vacancy. It became clear later on that the letter, which is purported to be coming from the municipal manager, is a fraudulent letter because the municipal manager has since distanced himself from that to say, I never wrote a letter. I recognize Lungile Mxube as a PR councillor, Professor Philip as a PR, Jane Bradshaw, Jonathan Walton, and Kungeka Mashian. But it was too late because the internal road managed to get the IEC to buy into their story. But the matter is now before the Electoral Court. We are waiting for the outcome of that process, and our application is unopposed. Both the IEC and the municipality said they are going to abide by the outcome of that process. So because of the ANC was threatened about our presence, and that's why they decided to commit serious fraud in terms of writing to the IEC. Even up until now, the municipality never acknowledge, they never even tell the court the identity of the person who signed the letter because it is not signed by the MM. Yeah, I think that was a plan basically to reduce the ANC below 50%, but also to ensure that we participate in the financial recovery plan, including its implementation.
Yeah, if I could just add a little bit to that. One of the issues that many people seem unaware of is that it's actually possible to have quite an effective campaign with very little money. We got more votes than the DA with a budget of 160,000 Rand in local donations, plus an external donation of T-shirts. And the magic really that made it all happen was a combination of factors. It was having a non-racial cross-class coalition. It was having the common purpose of being opposed to corruption and service delivery failure. And I must also give a lot of credit to Lungile Mxube for being a very skilled organizer. So you need all of those factors. You need to be very organized. You need to have a strong program for training volunteers. You need to motivate people to be willing to work hard for little or no money. But it is actually possible for a civic organization to do very well. And we cut the ANC's majority to 1 seat, where previously had a very comfortable majority. So naturally, they were very happy to push the 5 councillors out who are giving them a hard time. But, as Lungile says, we await the result from the Electoral Court. And if we have our 5 seats back from the hijack, we'll be back there giving them a hard time once again.
So basically, the long and the short of it is, at the moment, you're not the council and the way it's being run and the service delivery that you were getting before the case are kind of exactly what you're dealing with now. Nothing has really changed for like your day-to-day access to water. The municipal dumps still aren't working. The books aren't balanced. It's all still being held up in court action.
Absolutely. The last time we were in council, one of the things that happened was we had challenged the municipal manager to explain every point in the disclaimer on the last AG report. It was over 90 items. And now with the new municipal manager, the last AG report, there are 105 items in the disclaimer. And, a few years ago, we had a reason to have a big water problem here. The local dam was drying up. We have 2 different sources of water here. We have the local dam, which supplies the historically white-sided town mostly. And we get water also from a national scheme from the Orange and Fish Rivers to a different water plant. And whenever there's a drought and the local dams dry up, the government throws money at the James Kleinhans plant, which is the one that gets water from the national scheme. And whenever the drought breaks, they allow that project to quietly fail. So back in 2022, Lungile wrote to both the chair of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Water and Sanitation, and the National Minister, which I think he mentioned earlier, objecting to the fact that this water crisis was just not ending and listing a whole lot of issues that needed to be addressed, such as a forensic audit of the way the Amatola Water Board was managing those upgrade projects over the years, and an audit of the skills of the municipality. Now, since then, the drought has broken, but because we have been putting continual pressure on the government, they haven't actually stopped work on the James Kleiners project. In 2022, in Lungile's letter, he identified 600 million rand of spending that had been put up for that project with not much to show for it. Since then, the main contractor, Mamlambo Construction, went into liquidation and the project had to restart. At that point, we were told it was 80% complete. But we've actually been to that site several times and I don't think it was even 50% complete. So the hard question you have to ask is, who was signing off on expenditure to the tune of 80% of the budget when less than half of the work was actually done? Now, if we had not been putting continual pressure on them, such as writing articles in Daily Maverick, they would have just walked away from that and waited till the next drought and started from scratch. But, you know, but we've had numerous promises of completion of that project. And I don't know whether there's a special snails Olympics that the government is planning to enter, but it is gradually heading towards there. But in the meantime, the basic operation of the municipal services is still severely broken. But because people are keeping a close watch on it now, one of the things happened recently, for instance, is one of the high pressure lines burst. And within a matter of a day or two, it was repaired, and it appears it was repaired competently. Whereas previously, things like that would take weeks to repair, and then the repair would break and had to be done again. So we are getting some results from the constant pressure. But, you know, what I would really like is that the municipality itself would start developing a work ethic and a general view of caring about the residents. You know, we know some of the senior managers don't even live in town. There's a rumor that the mayor doesn't. And I'm kind of curious about whether a person who's elected to a certain office with a residential address that allows them to vote in that municipality can keep their seat if they move. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. But what commitment does it show to the job if senior people don't even live here? You know, so, you know, as I said right at the beginning, there isn't a magic bullet. It's continual pressure and it's being informed. The one other thing that Lungile alluded to was being in a highly qualified town with a good university and so on. We have people here like retired engineers who really know this stuff. So, you know, we're not on our own as a civic movement. I'm not an engineer. I don't know anything about water systems, but the people I talk to do know about these things and who can help us to understand the issues and to ask the hard questions. So, you know, I think things are not quite as bad as they were a year ago, but they are certainly a lot worse than they should be, given that the drought is broken. And, you know, we're just talking about water. There are other issues like potholes, sewer leaks, continually failing electric infrastructure, and so on and so on. You know, so it's not just that. One of the things we did during our election campaign was we did a kind of an audit that we went around to all of the wards and we asked everyone, what are their problems? And, you know, Lungile played a big role in drawing up our manifesto. So, you know, he probably has more insight than I do into what the whole big list was. But, you know, it's never ending and it's only going to get better if we keep applying the pressure.
Hi, okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. So this is Jonathan Erasmus. I'm just stepping in. Thank you very much, Philip. We've obviously got some connectivity issues with Julia, so I'll be continuing it from this point onwards. Just to kind of pull everything back to why we're here, I just thought I'd run through what this actual, so I have looked at this case and I thought I just wanted to enlighten the listeners, just some of the things that this community did. Now, to achieve the order, basically Makhanda residents and the Makhanda Business Forum, they used technology, they used mass action campaigns, they had detailed record keeping, good community work, constant engagement with the municipalities, letter campaigns, and media releases over a 5-year period before actually approaching the court. I think that's important. So we all think that we often there's this kind of dive by organizations who say we just want to go to court, but the process is fundamental to getting into court. So in the records that I have, and maybe Philip or Lungile will jump in if they think I'm incorrect, but from about April, it was all kind of started in about 2014, when the applicant, which was UPM, and the Public Service Accountability Monitor from Rhodes University, they wrote an open letter to the MEC for local government traditional affairs, the mayor, the council, etc., to please ask for an intervention in terms of Section 139 of the Constitution. And that's really where it began. And one of the things that they said in that letter was, in 2005, Makana received a VUNA award, which is an award for municipalities, for excellence in service delivery. They had financial reserves of more than 50 million rand and about 350 employees. By the end of 2014, Makana was bankrupt. It was owed or in debt of 150 million rand, and of which 57 was to Eskom alone. And they had 1,500 employees. And I think that in itself is startling. And that was really the basis of which drove their case. There was obviously an intervention in 2015, which they didn't agree with, and they kept up this letter writing campaign, excuse me, throughout. They also had regular meetings, as I said, with the mayor, etc., and so forth. They even crowdfunded the citizens to fix potholes. But one of the kind of parts that I thought were really interesting is that the use of technology, and they developed their own municipal type of reporting act, which is a very kind of web form. I think it was called MobiSam, if I'm not mistaken. And this allowed them to start collating data of service delivery failures. And this was actually quite important to its case because it was referenced in the case. They were able to use documentary, geolocated evidence as to where the problems were and what hadn't been seen to. So this really just draws the picture of the need for the collation of information, for making sure you keep on top of everything, and for almost being better prepared than the folk that you're going up against. So Philip or Lungile, perhaps, maybe Lungile, if you could just speak a little bit more to the kind of the mass action campaigning that you used during that period in order to get this matter to court. I think it was in the 2019 that the matter went to court, and the judgment was handed down on the 14th of January 2020. So Lungile, would you just tell us a little bit about the kind of mass action campaigns that you ran?
Thank you very much. One of the things that we agreed as a collective leadership of the civil society was to establish what we call the Makana Civil Society Coalition Forum. And that forum was a conglomeration of all civil society, including all those that we have already mentioned. Now, the leadership then agreed that the UPM must be the lead organization when it comes to litigation and dissolution of the Makana municipality. And the reason why we chose the UPM, it was based on a sound legal advice that in the event we lose the case, we must choose an organization where they won't be able to attach anything from that organization. That's how the UPM was then chosen. But we adopted what we called a 10-point plan towards the dissolution of the Makana municipality, so that it can guide our struggle, our campaign plan, our activities as a build-up, because it was a combination of many activities towards the dissolution. The first thing that we agreed was that we need a strong grassroots mass-based civic movement, and that we must suspend all artificial differences. Anybody who wants to become part of the Makana Civil Society Coalition Forum, leave your ideology, leave your politics outside the room. We are here, we want to discuss how best you can save our city. Was the corrupt rod managed to take our city from being a city of saints into a city of shame, disgrace, and disgust. So that was the first pillar of our 10-point plan, that we must mobilize and build a strong grassroots mass civic movement. The second pillar, we said we must have a healthy dialogue among ourselves as civic organization in terms of crafting a clearer vision. What kind of a municipality we want to build? We then said, we don't want a municipality that works for our communities, but we want a municipality that works with us as civil society leadership and the communities. And there is a big difference, because for a very long time, the municipality undermined communities, even on the IDP processes. They just come to impose IDP priorities without those priorities being discussed by the communities. We said part of want to change in this municipality is the way the municipality engages civil society and local communities. And for us to be able to do that, we said, pillar number 3, we need a strong leadership of the civil society. It's not going to be easy, because civil society in South Africa today is treated as if it is an opposition of the ruling party. We are facing a lot of problems, assassination, we are being sidelined. But we said we must build a very strong leadership. We don't know how long it's going to take to win the case for the dissolution, but let's build a strong grassroots leadership. Also, we said resource mobilization is going to be very key, because pre-1994, civil society in South Africa was able to mobilize international donor funding. But post-1994, this government decided to change in terms of policy to make it very difficult for civil society to access international donor funding. Because when you get international donor funding, you are labeled as an agent of the West, imperialist, and all those things. So, but we said, with little resources that we can mobilize locally, let's make an impact. Also, we said, we need to form a broad strategic alliance and coalition outside Makhanda, where the UPM played a crucial role in terms of linking up with other civil society nationally. Also, because the United Front was also part of that family, we played a very important role in terms of lobbying NUMSA, for instance, all independent trade unions, to support us, even if they give us some vehicles, so that we are able to utilize those vehicles. So we were supported by NUMSA in terms of the resources, including getting some branding material and so on and so on, in order to popularize our campaign. We also said the centrality of the communities is very important in our campaign. So on a daily basis, we have a contingent of volunteers who were working with communities while councillors were busy enjoying the gravy train inside the council, who were in the communities on a 24-hour basis, working with communities, picking up their service delivery problems, write to the municipalities, petition the Human Rights Commission, and to ensure that we also use social media to popularize. By the time they come back to respond, the ANC was completely paralyzed. And as a result of that, we were able now to support the legal case by material evidence to say this is what is happening in our communities. And also, we're also able to ensure that the entire society isolate the ANC. And hence now, when 2021 came, the results shows that the people of Makana were already in the process of rejecting the ANC. Yeah, so I think that's what happened as part of our mass mobilization, placing unity as a very important platform to build a strong civil society, but also placing the centrality of our communities at the center of our campaign.
Thank you, Lungile. Thank you very much. And I think I just want to add before I'm going to hand back to Julia, she's managed to reconnect, was that when this matter was, this court judgment was handed down, the Eastern Cape government basically said they had no choice but to try and appeal it, because I think, and the quote was in the court papers, aggrieved citizens of other municipalities will no doubt see the judgment of this court as providing an opportunity to get rid of elected municipal councils through judicial intervention, close quote. And I think that's quite significant, that it really, in a way, it became the people versus state, and it was that. And but you continued the fight. Thank you very much, and I think you've obviously done many people a great service in how they approach and think about how they take on their municipalities in the future. But Julia, would you like to come back in?
Thanks so much, Jonathan. Really appreciate it. And I think one of the key things to learn from a lot of what happened here, and it's also brought up in the chat, that this wasn't just a group of NGOs and civil society groups that were trying to take over some political allegiance. There's very much a broad society push here. It's not an us versus them situation, it's everyone was involved. So someone asked earlier in the chat, did business get behind this? Of course, the Business Forum was quite involved as one of the claimants, people who supported things as well, I believe. Phil, I see you've unmuted yourself there. Maybe you want to contribute.
Right. So the business was quite strongly behind various parts of this campaign. The costs of running the petition, which collected over 20,000 signatures. And even though the legal team was acting pro bono, there were still costs, and the business community covered that. In our election campaign, we raised 160,000 Rand, most of which was from our local business community. I just want to add another thing which actually helped a lot with social cohesion, was during the early days of COVID, when we had the hard lockdowns and there was immediate panic about food security and so on, we pulled together as a community, and all sectors played a role. There were some who raised lots of money, brought in outside donations like Khaleesi Foundation, Oxfam and so on. And, so we built up a whole network of community kitchens that were very much part of the community being supported from all directions. And we haven't completely managed to maintain that, because funding community kitchens outside of a time of dire emergency is difficult. But we have maintained some of those networks, and that was a big help in terms of maintaining that spirit of togetherness when we came into the 2021 election.
Yeah, and I think also it's something that I've really learned about the spirit and togetherness of the groups in Makhanda and Makana, is that I think it's a trick that we need to learn as activists, as people who want to really partake in this co-governance model, is that instead of relying on party lists when it comes to who's going to represent us on a ward and council and municipal level, it's really about finding the people who are on the ground, who are community champions, who are working in the communities to represent us when it comes to these spaces. And I really implore people to start standing for council, start being involved in the actual running of your cities and your municipalities from a grassroots level, rather than voting for, distant political parties and political lists. And I think that's an important lesson from Makhanda. But also, the Makhanda case is a landmark judgment. As Phil said, it was not a silver bullet. These actions of forcing civil servants to be representatives of their constituencies is vital, but the reality is power corrupts. We have to keep a firm grasp on our rights, but it isn't easy. Administration, dissolving council, attaching the mayor's car, like I mentioned earlier, must be done. But it's not the end of our watchdog duties. It's just the beginning of starting to get these jobs done. These lessons, though, are an education in how and why we should begin to win. They are expensive, so unless you've got the pro bono legal opinion and so forth that Makhanda had, it might be very difficult, but also it's about bringing everyone in on board and making sure you've got broad-based civil society, business, government, a whole bunch of buy-in. I'd like to thank our panelists tonight and encourage them to share where their journey of co-governance takes them next, what happens with that electoral court decision, I think will be very important to understanding this precedent. And our next webinar in the series is on public land occupations. So we will discuss the rights and responsibilities of the city, the occupiers, local residents, as well as learn from communities who are trying to get the city to do their duty in the open spaces and suburbs of Johannesburg. You can join us for that on April 24th at 6 o'clock, same time, last Wednesday of the month. You can also join the CAN network to find out more about what we do. You can check that out at can.org.za. We've got a forum there, which Jonathan mentioned in the chat, where you can ask questions of other community members about issues facing you and your organizations. A lot of you are from different municipalities and groups across the country, those in Clarence and further afield. Please do log in, it's free, and we can all continue the conversation there. There's also a helpful list of resources on the website that build on tonight's conversation and all of our workshops and webinars in the series, so go please have a look. This has been the second episode of our CAN Co-Governance series. Let us know what types of topics or questions you would like us to tackle in these monthly webinars, and we'll make sure to grow and engage with you as they continue. Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you, Philip, Jonathan, and Lungile for all your help tonight.
And without further ado, I think Julia's her network has just passed out on us. But thank you all very much.
Well, and thank you for hosting us.
All right.